Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Janine, for that introduction, and thank you for your incredible work with the homeless and the faith community here in Kent County. And thank you, Senator Kaufman, for your gracious introduction, for your real leadership for our state in the Senate. And thank you, Senator Carper, for making it all possible. Thank you for the introduction, for the encouragement, and for the support. We are grateful for so many folks who've come out here today to support us, our Lieutenant Governor, our Attorney General, members of the State Senate and State House, members of the Governor's Cabinet, leaders of our community and our party. Thank you all. Isn't this a gorgeous afternoon? I can think of no better place, no better day to be announcing my candidacy for the Senate than right here in a museum dedicated to the history of what is still today and should be in the future, Delaware's biggest and most important industry. To be here with Dee Hartley and all the folks who worked so hard to make this Ag Museum possible, with some great and old friends of ours, Ruth Ann and Bobby Messick, who've known my wife longer than I have, folks who have opened their homes and their hearts, who've welcomed us as we've grown up in this community. Thank you. Thank you for making this a fantastic day for every one of us. As we spent this weekend running up to today's announcement, I was struck by a couple of things that were reminders for me of the challenges facing Delaware and our country and of what makes this a terrific place. It began Saturday morning. I was at the opening day ceremonies for Bear Babe Ruth and was impressed by the dozens and dozens of parents who'd spent so much time working to build the fields and get them ready so that thousands of kids could play, not just there in Bear, but up and down our state. We've got so many dedicated volunteers who make Little League possible. And then yesterday afternoon, along with other electeds and civic leaders, I stood with pride at the state fairgrounds as we welcomed home the 262nd Repair Company of the Delaware National Guard, Delaware's own citizen soldiers returning from a year in Iraq, keeping our nation safe, every one of them safe. Two of those returning soldiers were Newcastle County police officers, and I choked up with pride watching as their families were reunited, as people were joyful in celebrating not just their service, but their safe return. And last night, as Annie and the kids and I settled into her parents' place in Lewis, we took a moment. We took a moment to reflect on this adventure, on the challenges of the path ahead. And as we looked at our kids, we had the same questions in our hearts that I know many families across the state and country have. We wonder if they're going to be able to look forward to a safe and secure and a better future. Because each of those things that we looked at over this weekend has a tougher side too. As Little Leagues are opening their seasons, I've heard several times that there's more and more kids who can't afford the equipment, can't afford the fees, can't play because mom or dad has lost their job and they're struggling. And that's affected nonprofits all up and down this state. As Janine knows, there are more people hungry and homeless. There are more churches and nonprofits struggling in these times than ever before. And while we were celebrating the return of those two county officers and everybody, the whole 138 members of the 262nd yesterday, I also spent time this weekend with the spouse of another county police officer who is right now training for his third deployment. We have asked so much of our military families, and the two wars in Southwest Asia have been an enormous challenge, an enormous drain on our national treasury, and a huge burden that our military families are bearing on behalf of us all. And then last night, as we rode into Lewis and saw the sun setting over the Delaware Bay, I was reminded of the long-term challenges that we see here in our state for our shoreline, whether from climate change or from foolish proposals in Washington to increase oil drilling off of Delaware's own coast. All of these things left me with questions about the future and what it's going to look like for our kids, for your kids, for all of America's families. Will they be proud then of the choices that we make now? Or will they look back and question how we could have ever been so short-sighted? As you heard from both senators, when Annie and I watched the fighting going on in Washington, we at times question whether the folks down there are more interested in winning the next election or in laying the groundwork for the next generation. There are real and tough choices in front of us. And although I like and respect my opponent, and I honor his decades of service to Delaware and his 18 years in Congress, I really don't think that all those years of experience as a Washington insider are the source for the solutions that this country needs. We have tough choices in front of us, and I think they need new leaders with new ideas, folks who have energy and commitment to take on Washington's politics as usual. It is because these choices are clearer and tougher than ever, and because Delaware deserves someone who will stand up and fight for the next generation, that I am here today to declare my candidacy for Delaware's open seat in the United States Senate. Thank you. Thank you. 10 years ago, as you heard from Senator Carper, I got into county government because I was upset. I was upset by politics as usual, by folks serving in politics there who were content with the way things were and ignoring the constituents who'd elected them. I fought hard on county council for better land use planning, for increased investment in farmland preservation, for more public libraries and public safety, to save our senior meals program, and more importantly than anything, to challenge a county administration out of touch with the public and increasingly out of control. 6 years ago, I was elected county executive and took on the tough job of fixing a government racked by wasteful spending and corruption. Left in the wake was growing deficits, out of control spending, and serious problems. We had to make tough choices, and while the choices I made were not always popular, they were necessary. I worked to increase transparency, to put our county's checkbook up on the internet so the folks who pay the bills could see where the money was coming from and where it was going to. I changed budget practices of amending the budget in the middle of the night in the dark to hide where things were going and to add new programs or new expenses in the middle of the budget year. And I worked to streamline our permitting process, to improve code enforcement, and to increase access to quality housing. I'm as upset by government waste as anyone. So as county executive, I made sure we reined in spending and made tough cuts, eliminating employee perks, capital projects we couldn't afford, and grand public events the county simply couldn't sustain. Before my election as county executive, I worked for 8 years in the private sector for one of Delaware's most innovative companies, and I brought that experience to bear as well, both to cut our budget and improve how our county worked for our community, to partner with local communities and help them to get through government roadblocks and create good jobs for our community. Last year, like so many governments across our country and like so many families, we faced the toughest budget in a generation, with record deficits and following Delaware values. In order to find a fair solution, I asked everyone to participate and everyone to sacrifice. I started by listening to what our residents wanted, what they valued, and what they were willing to pay for. By the end, together, we cut more than we raised. We reduced county spending by more than $130 million without closing libraries, selling parks, or making drastic cuts in public safety. In this campaign, I know I will be criticized for some of those tough decisions. But in this past budget year, we did what local and state governments all over this country either didn't or wouldn't do. Here in Delaware, at the state and county levels, we have worked hard to find bipartisan solutions to solve our budget problems without sacrificing our commitment to growing our economy, the safety of our neighborhoods, the services our citizens value most, or the values that define our community. It was hard, but I'm proud to say that working together with County Council, we found a bipartisan solution to that budget crisis, and we've maintained Newcastle County's AAA bond rating and left our county one of the strongest in America.